Welcome back to the Real Recovery Show, where we're joined here with Reagan and Brittany and Ashley, who we saw and spoke to last week on the topic of sex work and sex work industry and recovery. And now we're going to dig a little deeper and talk about our spirituality and our body image and our identity and purposes for life, and give a different view, perhaps, than most people might think who have never been exposed to maybe the industry itself and might have prejudice or ideas of judgments, but also people who are in the industry who might think that either negative ideas about themselves or negative ideas about somebody else as well. Because ultimately, whatever we do for a living or wherever we are, this is a spiritual journey that everybody's on. Just sometimes we get to a place where we wake up to the fact that we're really, what they say, we're spirits having a human experience. We're not humans having a spiritual experience. And so I'm going to start off sharing a little bit about how that shift happened for me as well. When I first started dancing, it was very much about trying to have enough money to support my parents and to save the house. It was very much about being empowered, and it was very much about getting as far away from my abusive house as possible. And all those were very necessary. I needed them very desperately, and I fell in love with dancing from day one, and never fell out of love with dancing either. And when I ended up getting into drugs and alcohol too much, way too much, and ended up bottoming and frying my brain, I ended up not sure if I was ever going to walk again. I was told that they wanted to put me in a long-term care facility, and I was only 23, and my life I thought was over. I had been running and gunning. I had been driving my life like a steamroller. I was living like a survivor. I was dancing as much as I could, having private shows, making as much money. Bought my first house when I was 21, and subsequently lost it during that bottom. Where I got foreclosed on. But when I had that shift of becoming sober, I had let go of running my life just long enough because I saw what a complete mess it was, and I didn't know if I was even going to make it. And so I said, take me or heal me, to whatever God was listening. And I heard a voice, I heard an intuition that said, okay, follow me, let go of ever dancing again, let go of ever walking again, let go of having a husband, children, anything. Just listen and follow me. And I took these little baby steps. And one could think that if somebody who was a dancer, who was also very involved in alcohol and drugs and bulimia, etc., that listening to a higher power, listening to an intuitive voice, listening to God, surely wouldn't lead them back on stage. I didn't end up dancing in spite of that voice. I felt guided to go back. And now I went back to dancing with a totally different mindset. I mean, of course, I still had a lot of the same thinking, but I had something else now. I had a higher power, a higher consciousness that I was also listening to, and being a dancer sober and trying to have relationships sober, because I was like a serial monogamist. Like, I would get into relationships just so I could have sex. But then as I was doing it sober, everything was different. And I needed to learn tools. I needed to be able to heal whatever it was that I was running on that could help me, that was hindering me from really truly knowing myself and being free and empowered as a woman. And I danced from 23 years old. I danced all the way up until I was 31, 30, I don't know. But I danced for a total of 10 years with a tiny bit in the middle where I was sick. And I have to tell you, like, even with seizures and having a bodyguard manage me around my seizures, even with all the stuff that I had to heal with trauma. It was where God took me. And I'll say this last thing. I heard something once when somebody was saying, why would God take you there? And this person said it was actually in a meeting of A Course in Miracles many years ago. He said, why wouldn't God take you there? Is there a place on earth that he wouldn't be with you and he wouldn't use you to share the truth to somebody else of hope and inspiration and whatever? And the truth is, I was used that way. You know, people would come in, I'd end up with conversations, and sometimes I would get mad tips just because I had a really good conversation with them, or other people needed help. And as I was growing and growing and growing, I did get to a place where I outgrew for myself that lifestyle. There was a place my intuition now wanted me to go, but it never made it wrong or bad. It just said, and now this chapter is coming to a close, and now this is what you're going to do next. And so when I got into recovery, during and then after, I really honestly heard a lot of people say, oh, honey, you know, it's okay that you did that. You know, you're still lovable, but with a lot of inherent judgment and shame in that. And I just don't have that perception of it. I did feel like I needed to heal a lot of stuff around it, but I've been healing and I keep healing. And that's just the nature of recovery. And so today's conversation is talking about the shifts in perception and how we end up changing it, whether you end up going to church, whether you end up getting involved with going back to any kind of religion that you were involved in, or you start getting into Buddhism or anything, and how for you, your walk has become more spiritual, but not instead of the industry, really recognizing that, wherever we go, there we are. And I'm still a stripper, even though I don't get on stage. I still have so much of that mentality in me, but I think that that's part of what I love about myself. So that's what we're going to do today on this topic. And if you missed all of our introductions, go back and watch the previous episode. But we're going to take it off from there. And so, Reagan, I know that you actually got back involved in church too, right? In your recovery. While you can reintroduce yourself and say how long you've been dancing, etc.
I will reintroduce myself. My name is Reagan. I'm sobriety date April 19, 2012. Stripper date 14 years as an exotic dancer. Because talking about spirituality and God, I think that's one of the reasons I've been able to stay sober and work as a dancer, because in my heart, I'm very grateful that I've been able to have a job where I can make money. And I still love going to work and going on stage and performing. So, and then the church aspect, well, yeah, I go to church. So, and having a relationship with God is the most important thing in my life and in my recovery. And I am a person who is spiritual, and I'm very open-minded. Being in recovery, you're introduced to the higher power concepts and how that's very individual. So even now, I usually don't always use the word God when I'm like this is an interview, because I know multiple people are going to be listening. And to me, it's really important that if I share or speak about my higher power, I want to be connecting with the person that I'm speaking to at that time. So, I like to keep an open mind for however anyone, or even if they're a non-believer or wherever that person's at, it's just important to be able to connect. So yeah, I love spirituality and spiritual growth.
Okay. And I know, Brittany, you also have gone to church. You've meditated and prayed before porn, right? Or any kind of event. You want to share a little bit about that?
So, yes, I would love to. I've got some fabulous stories. But, first and foremost, for me, my spirituality came way before my sobriety. So I was going to church way before I ever got sober. My obviously my sobriety, I work really closely with what I like to call my mother goddess she. But my spirituality and my sobriety, they're not, inclusive, right? It's like, I had my spirituality way before I ever got into, recovery. Yeah. So, and then I relapsed and I still had my spirituality.
Right.
I was still meditating.
Right.
I was still talking to my God, So I know that some people, they found their God in recovery. I had mine way before. And it's very funny because, as a sex worker, I was having a lot of issues with what kind of spirituality I was going to have because there was no way on earth that I was going to believe in anything that they put the sex worker down. I did not believe that she was like, a whore and like awful and bad and a sinner. And so I really was going through like reading even Buddhism puts the hoe down. So I was like, I can't believe in Buddhism
the hoe
either.
Down.
They do. And I was like, no, I can't do it. And then I was in London. I had my spiritual experience and I was reading a book by Dr. Wayne Dyer called There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem. And I got it. And that was actually right after that trip was my first time of trying to get sober. I didn't get sober for like another, 7 years later. But I did start going to my church. One of the cameramen, that I knew was a spiritual practitioner at the church that I've been going to for 20 years now, in Los Angeles. And it's, online as well. So, and I've got so many different stories, but, it's funny because I'll just tell this one and then we'll move on to the next person. But so as a porn star, right? Often there's more than one gentleman in a scene and it can be quite, difficult to get both of them to give you the money shot at the same time. So quite often one of them is ready and the other one is not. And so when somebody is working on, giving you the money shot, you're talking to the camera guy and the lighting person, you're just shooting the shit and they're jerking off over here and the other one's jerking off over there and you're having the conversation. Then both of them go, okay, we think we're ready, right? And so then everybody shuts up and the camera starts rolling. One guy's jerking off over here, one guy's jerking off over here. And the one guy that's having a difficult time is still having a difficult time. And I've literally gone, Mother goddess she, I've got to go to my recovery thing after this. Do you mind helping a brother out to like hurry up? Because thank you. Which is one of the reasons I have a mother goddess she, because I need to be able to bring her with me everywhere, and I do. I bring her. She gets me. She knows who I am. She made me. And my spirituality is extremely important to me. My mother goddess she is number one in my life. And I'm, all into all kinds of weird shit. I just went to Sedona. I'm into the crystals and the tarot cards and the whole 9 yards. And, sometimes people in recovery, they want to judge me because of what I do. Then they want to judge me because of my kind of spirituality. Luckily, I've never given a flying fuck. And with that, I'll pass on to the next person.
I love it. Oh, shit. Sorry. Okay. So
how can you say sorry for saying shit after she just said all that?
Right? All right. So fuck. God. Yes. God. Look, I was raised a Christian in my family, and my dad found out I lost my virginity, and he came into my room and he said, you gave up one of the most precious things that God has given you. And he closed the door. So ever since then, I thought I was going to hell. So I'm fucked, right? And so that's how I lived my life. I didn't believe in a God. I did not believe in a higher power of any sort. I totally gave up. I didn't want to look at a church. I was invited, and I was like, no, not my jam. But, when I got into recovery, it was like, my support group would tell me, you got to believe in something, and but you're not there yet. I'm like, okay, cool, because I don't want to hear that fucking word. Mm-hmm. And so, with patience and practice and learning how to meditate and, after all the stuff that I went through, I did start to believe that I was destined to become something different. And I had a bigger purpose than what I was doing. Because like I said, it was life or death for me. And at the end of the day, I didn't want to die.
Right.
So, Yeah, man. I don't know. I have a loving higher power today, and it's something I created for myself. That's what they told me to do, and it's loving, it's light, it's beautiful, it's all these good things, and I just try to carry it with me everywhere. And I pray occasionally. I mean, I'm not perfect. I don't get on my knees and worship the ground, and but. And people, like, when I was dancing clean for my first few months, like, I would have people tell me, like, what are you doing here? Because I would always try to keep this genuine part of me, and I carried that with me throughout that time, and, that was what kind of motivated me to get out, too, like, you're right, like, I can't do this anymore here, and, yeah, that's all I'll say about that.
I think that it's really important to know that, just like a bottom is when you get to a place where your life has become intolerable to you. I feel like if or when we have to make a change, it is because something has become intolerable to us. Like, where there's a line that we set and that really felt like it resonated, and we crossed it. I remember this one show I did. It was my last, was it? Yes, it was. It was my last private show. I made $1,000 for being wrapped in cellophane and parts of my body being kissed through cellophane. And you would think that, well, I don't know what you would think, but I remember sitting in my car outside of the hotel, feeling this split where part of me was like, I don't want to go into this. I don't want to do it. And the rest of me was like, you know what? Go. Just do it. And I did it, and I was so uncomfortable. I felt like I crossed something. I crossed a line for myself. And I know that in and of itself doesn't really matter, the thing that happened. It was just, there was something about the energy of it. There was something about that day. There was something about where my spirit was, and I wasn't honoring it. That is, to me, the only thing that was wrong, was that I wasn't being true to me intuitively. And so it stayed as kind of like this measuring stick, if you will, like an image of that, because I also know that I did not have that don't do this feeling for most of my dancing career, for most of the private shows, for everything. I felt very much that so much of it was intuitive for me. When I was a dancer, the first part of my dancing, there was no lap dancing. It didn't exist in New York. It was actually just being on stage to music and great sexy clothes and having buckets shoe buckets where people would give you money on the stage and you would just put it in and trade it into the house. And when after I was sick and I went back, it started to transition and lap dancing started, and I had to ask myself if this was something that I wanted to do. And then what ended up happening is people started coming up from the Bible Belt, and they were working, and they were way willing to do way more, regardless of the law. And so it just kept changing the industry. And as I was in the industry, this was all in the 90s. It was like the entire 90s. I saw myself do things that I had set a line for myself. And I don't regret them. I don't feel bad about them. I don't feel shame about it. I know that there are people that have judgments and think that you should feel bad about it, but I don't, because I know that I feel like that was exactly where I was supposed to be at the time, doing what I felt like I was supposed to do. And it's all information to me. It's all lessons and learning. So yeah, like, Brittany said, when I got into recovery, I very much, in fact, I'll say this last thing. When I was doing drugs, I was very into all the pendulum and the tarot cards and all that. And I've been since then, but during that time of taking things that made me hallucinate, I used to joke that when I got into recovery that I had to heal from things that didn't happen, because I had so much in my effort to sincerely find a higher power, to sincerely find my way, to get the clarity. The desire was always there. I just needed to get more honest with myself and to get more in alignment. So, yeah. So, and in that too, as we become more spiritually focused, whether we believe in a God, whether we believe in just the spiritual universe, whether we believe, whatever we believe in, our stories about who we think we are and what we think we're supposed to be doing, it changes as we change our perception, as we forgive the stories of, because in our society, there are judgments about this. That's the whole reason for doing a show like this, is that there's judgments and prejudices. And honestly, if there wasn't so much of a repressed societal idea, we wouldn't even have half of the sex industry, because it would be so normal and so mainstream that it wouldn't be so extra. That people would need to go someplace to get something or whatever like that. It would just be more happenstance. And so for you guys, as you've been going through your life before you got into the industry or recovery, how has your story about being a woman, how has who you thought when you were a little girl, who you felt like you needed to be when you grew up, and then how you viewed your sexuality, how did it change for you in that? How did it change how you see yourself as a woman to become a healthier self-perception and love yourself? So I'll give this to you, Reagan. Would you like to share on that?
How I see myself as a woman and my self-perception. Well, since we're having like an open flow conversation, one thing that came to mind right now, especially with recovery and this topic and being open about, perception, I think one thing that has been a learning experience or kind of weird to observe how people will develop a different view about me, like based on, like what I do, and now how polarized they can be, like the spirituality piece. Like I've been told, like, what, God, you are, an example of being sober, and, God can be using you as an example as someone who could stay sober in what you do. And then I've heard like the total opposite, where like, you know what, like that is not God's will for you, like, being the enemy, and to just hear like so many different polarized views about like people's perceptions and how they can be so opposite, like that has kind of had an effect on me in my recovery. And then the other ways of it too, like, oh, you're a stripper, so yeah, that must be really empowering for you, or you're a stripper, so like you must still really be struggling, or right. You must make a lot of money as a dancer. Oh man, you must, just all these things. And so I feel I have stayed grounded throughout my recovery I have close friends and family that I talk to regularly that know like the real me, like really, really know me on a deep level, and like those personal relationships and having healthy esteem. Because yeah, I've struggled with my identity as like, being open about being a stripper and my faith, or again, like other people's perceptions of me. So like I have struggled with that. And I just know throughout my journey, like I have always stayed connected to myself. I've always taken the balance for self-care and like the ability to check in with myself, my mental health, my emotional stability, getting, recovery help, and then having help outside of that. And like the gym is a huge factor for me. The gym helps me stay really grounded because it's like, it's very physical. It's lifting weights. It's just, it's been stabilizing for me. So I feel like I'm a overall well-balanced, healthy person. And
yeah, I mean, I've known you for a while now, and I feel like you do, for my perception is you do embody somebody who's very settled in it, very good about it. I never saw you as somebody who was tortured by the idea of, here you have, church or your spirituality, your recovery stuff, and then here you have your dancing. I never felt like it was these two different things. Maybe because I always I see your spirit and I see how bright a light you are, but I also see that you're dancing and that you're doing something that I also loved, as a career for a while. And the only thing I will say is that I've always been mad jealous of your ability to do the pull, because I can never do the pull.
I want to see.
So
why don't you have a stripper pull in here,
right?
girlfriend?
Have you ever been able to spin around on a pole, Brittany? Have you ever been able to?
No, I've never been a pole dancer. I mean, I've done
how you do it.
poles, honey, but not that kind.
Yeah, no, I've never been able to do it. And it looks so good, and you see people spinning around, and they look so. Can you do it, Ashley?
Yes.
You can? Oh, that's right. You have a pole in your apartment, right? You said, or
my ex-boyfriend.
your ex-boyfriend's.
I'm about to have my own apartment.
I think it's because we're from the 90s. It was different back then.
Yeah, I don't know. I've always wanted to. Maybe I don't have enough upper body strength. Maybe because my breasts are too big. I don't know. But like something keeps making me feel like I'm weighed down. And like I'll get up and I'll think, this is a great start. And my thighs are holding on to the pole so much that I'm like, how do you spin? I can't spin. My thighs are glued to the pole. How do you do that? How did you learn how to dance on a pole?
Class.
Oh, pole class.
I took classes first.
They have pole classes. You're right, Brittany. They didn't have pole classes.
No, they did not.
No. You guys are spoiled.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I guess, mind if I jump in?
Yeah.
Sure. So that was a very loaded question you asked. I'm trying to figure out exactly how to dissect it. But, I like to talk about self-love a lot.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of why I think I originally got sober. So I already was a spiritual person before I got into recovery. And, like I talked about before, Dr. Wayne Dyer, spiritual solution to every problem. Then I started doing a lot of Louise L. Hay, You Can Heal Your Life. And so I was listening to that every morning, and then I was like having to take like vitamins and different things to counteract, to make sure that my liver doesn't, go down or whatever, all the drugs and alcohol that I was consuming. And I was like, these two concepts don't go together. Mm-hmm. Of like, I love myself, but then I'm poisoning myself, mm-hmm. So that started my journey of recovery. I believe started before that, but with drugs and alcohol. I believe it started with really practicing principles of self-love. Mm. And, as far as like purpose goes, I've always felt as though my purpose was in the adult entertainment industry. I did take a proper amount of time away from it. I was in it for 15 years, then I left for 10 years, and then I came back in 2018. But I was even involved before that as well in different ways. And I do think it is important to have individuals like myself and yourself that are able to be in the business, and to be able to be exactly who we are.
Yeah.
It's like I never struggled with any of the perceptions because I'm just me, I'm me in recovery. I'm me in the adult business. And even with the adult business, like talking about perceptions, 90% of my work is actually at a desk or at my phone doing emails. Right. And like most people think like, oh, you suck so cock for a living. I do. Don't get me wrong. But 90% of it is actually doing office work. You know, and then you've got that whole perception of, well, so then you're a sexual icon. You must be horny all the time, you know, and many of us have spoken in this room that no. Yeah. And I know many other women that are in the business that are sexual icons because of age, because of hormones, all these different things, you know, and for us that we spoke about before, our sobriety got in the way of our sexuality. You know, so there's all these perceptions of supposedly what, you know, we are, and most of them are wrong, right? You know, I'm a woman and I start off, you know, my day with, you know, focusing on my recovery and going to the gym and dealing with my office. I've got like 30 employees and I check in with my mother goddess she all the time, and I work on my PTSD and I work on my business and I work on my brand and all these different things. And, you know, I do the best of my ability. I suit up, I show up. I know I've got a bunch of different issues. But I love myself. I'm a beautiful human being. And it's been interesting how over the years, you know, what maybe I thought was my purpose before and how it was going to play out is different than how it's playing out. And how it's playing out is being a loving, kind, compassionate, funny, dirty, dark, me, just being me and doing me, and recognizing and seeing others and being able to have these kind of conversations and coming from a place of love and non-judgment and, you know, and that's where I think, you know, maybe I thought it was one thing and now it's become something else. And I'll finish with this, you know, I wasn't just nominated, Dominatrix of the Year. And so I have to train a bunch of people on how to be femdom. And there's so much stuff that's like with PTSD, with people that are into these different things. And I'm like, it's important that, you know, I create a safe space so that they can do healing, transformative healing work, you know? And so there's just so many different, you know, ways that maybe I thought it was going to be that it ended up being, you know, different. And it's all spiritual and it's all God at the end of the day.
I think if we're coming from a spiritual headspace or we're just making sure we're right with our intuition, everything becomes about helping. I do feel that when you make somebody happy or smile, or, you know, you're a beautiful woman and you've given them the time of day, or you message them, or you comment on somebody commenting on what you're posting on Facebook. There's something that a person feels seen or heard. It's like these little things you can't quantify, because if you're truly doing what's right for you. And I do feel like it's very inspirational to see somebody like you, Brittany, to see all of us confident and comfortable in our own skin to talk about a topic like this, because we're not riddled with shame about the idea that we're willing to talk about it at the level of this video, saying, you know, whoever hears it, our whole purpose is to speak about it so that it could be helpful and to let people know, that there's no shame in this game of wherever we're at in it. And I personally have found BDSM to be also a very healing avenue for me. You know, having to be on all the time, being alpha in my life, and then finding out that there's this submissive side of me, which nobody would ever thought that was there, but sure it was. And so I do understand the healing of being able to experience different parts of ourselves and to be that person. How did you feel, you know, coming out of the industry, Ashley, working on, you know, changing your perception of what you need to do to make money, because for you felt like it was now not an option. And so how did your thinking around your worth, yourself, being a woman, but being also like, you know, to be empowered now after that in this next chapter for you?
So, you know, once I got done dancing, I really had to stop and think about what I was passionate for. And I'm very passionate with kids. I've always been a babysitter since I was like 13, have a little brother. And, that was the one thing that I did throughout my addiction that kept me wanting to live, because I felt like kids were like this positive thing in my life that, I had this attachment with kids that just kept me going. So as of today, my purpose is I still babysit. I have a couple families I babysit for, and I had the opportunity to work in treatment, and I loved it. But, I got my bachelor's in psychology, and I never did anything with it because I gave up, right? So now I'm in a position after 3 years clean of, okay, what do I want to do? What do I want to do with that? Do I want to go back to school? And I do. So yeah, man, I want to go back to school, either pursuing social work, maybe to work with kids, or substance abuse. That's kind of where I'm at. But this last year was so crazy for me because I came into recovery, pretty much in a relationship. I've never been single for a long time. And at all in my recovery. But, my relationship actually broke up 5 months ago. And I was in this really dark place because we weren't intimate. And our relationship was just not there. It was just work, sex, no play for ourselves. And that was our focus. And so I got into this really dark place, and he wanted to have sex every day. And I'm I don't want to just be used for sex.
Right.
I need intimacy. I have needs now. And so I went into this dark place, and our relationship ended very badly. And it was probably the best thing that's ever happened to me, because I am in this selfish place in my recovery for the first time, right? I'm not just focused on the job. I'm not focused on the relationship. I'm just focused on me now. So I've been really on this independent strike of okay, what do I want to do? And I'm finally getting my own place. I've never lived alone. So I'm gonna get my own stripper pole,
Girlfriend.
and just love myself by myself. And that's just that's exactly where I'm at. I'm just, and I went 4 months without having sex, and that's the longest time I've been since I lost my virginity. And that was I could cry about it because it's just crazy, but yeah, I'm healing now from that, and I'm just focused on me and
It's beautiful.
achieving those goals.
That's beautiful. I love that we also have, the story then, whenever there's another person that wants to talk about maybe leaving the industry, and there's stuff that you can and I can also share from that perspective as well to somebody. So I one time went to an all-women retreat, and I went in spite of the fact that it was all women, because I had a strong aversion to women, and I really grew up focused on men, focused on being a tomboy even, and I even lost my period for a whole year because I was so just wanting to not be a woman, be around girls, etc., while also wanting to be sexy and wanting to make money and get all this attention. So you figure that out. But I ended up really having an issue. I was jealous of women and suspicious of women, and so all my friends were men. And always men that wanted to be with me. And I didn't let them be with me. I let them want to be with me, and I would keep them in my life and use them and want that sense of friendship. But I always felt that because of my own unhealed trauma that, they are only friends with me because they want to be with me. And I just, what a lonely place to be. It was just a really dark place for me. And so I go to this retreat, and there was this one person, I'll never forget this. And we're in this meeting, and she said, at this retreat, she said, "How did you learn how to be a woman? Who did you learn it from? And it floored me because I realized that a lot of it was self-taught based on who I thought I needed to be, based on watching my dad's relationship with my mother's relationship with herself, and the porn and the Playboy and all that. You know, how it all was me wanting to be loved. It was all me wanting my dad's attention, you know, not sexually, of course, but I felt like, you know, my parents were both checked out with addiction. And I just felt like, how do I navigate so I don't get treated like my mother got treated, and I get the attention and I get the love, whatever I thought that was. And so I spent so much time teaching myself that, who I needed to be, that by the end of that retreat, I was crying and bawling and getting phone numbers from all these women, and I made a real effort to make more female friends after that, and not see people the way that I did, really work to heal my whole thing. Because if I see other women in any kind of negative light at all, I see myself that way. And whatever I was buying into about myself was always why I felt guarded anyway. And so today I love being a woman. I love women. I feel like I've healed so much in that perception. I wish I would have had more of that perception when I was a dancer, because I definitely didn't at the time. I had some girls that I was friends with, but more as like I was the mama bear. I was always the mama bear. But I really appreciate having that shift, and my relationship with men are healthier too. I would say we're still working on that. But yeah, so like, you know, how did you guys, actually, you know what? We will be right back after a break to answer those. So you have plenty of time to think of your answers for that question. The opinions expressed here are strictly those of the people who gave them and do not represent any 12-step program or should replace your own intuition or professional medical advice. See you in a bit. Welcome back to the Real Recovery Show. And so before the break, we were talking about our perceptions about being a woman, how we saw other women, how we see men, and how that's changed over the years, how it's changed maybe with some influence of our recovery or our spirituality. And so we're going to start off with Brittany, who's going to share a little bit about how she's seen herself, what got her to where she's now in her current perception.
So, yeah, as far as it goes with, let's say, start off with friendships, I definitely always had a lot more male friends than I did female. And I think that was because of the childhood trauma that I had. I was sexualized at a very young age. And one time I was fucked up, man. I was doing ketamine and drinking, and I was watching that movie, Black Snake Moan. I think that was the name of it. And I had this epiphany, the satori, that the friendships that I had made with men was actually a part of my healing, a lot of my early childhood sexual trauma, that I needed to have healthy relationships with men that didn't involve sexuality at all. I always was somebody that, if you're in the friend zone, you staying in the friend zone forever. Like, I do not fuck my friends, right? I think I fucked like 1 or 2 friends in my 50 years of being on this planet. And I didn't know it. And I didn't realize it till I was really off my head, and I was watching that movie and I just broke down and I was like, wow, all this time I've been doing some healing, and that was before I went on my recovery journey. But, as human beings, sometimes even we're in recovery before we realize that we're in recovery. And it took me a longer time to have relationships with women because women are intimidated by me. I'm loud. I'm a sex worker. I'm
confident.
I think I'm pretty funny too, And so I started using my sense of humor to work on women. And still to this day, it's one of those things of my presence, in front of women just makes them, and I have to do work to make them comfortable to be around me. And especially within the recovery space, I just went to a luau with a bunch of people in recovery recently, and the outfit I would have normally wore, I'm like, I got to make this church, honey. I got to change my luau outfit from hooker to church. Because the hooker's going to church, honey, right? So, I am aware of what I look like. And I try to make sure I play it down to a certain extent. I don't make any excuses for who I am and what I do. You don't like it, fuck yourself. That's your problem. But, I am aware that it can be a lot to take in. And so I do try to use a sense of humor. I try to, I'm aware that I can make people feel, women in particular, let's just say women. Men, I got no problem with. Women, I can make them uncomfortable. And so I do go out of my way to make sure that I am aware and I'm thinking about them and not just myself at that moment. And I'm trying to make them comfortable to be around me. And most women love me after, I do my due. Then they're like, oh, that's just Brittany Lord, But, it definitely has always been a thing. However, if it's with other strong women, I have no problem. Like as a dominatrix, as a porn, I'm a sex worker in many different areas, right? But I've always got along with other dominatrixes because they're very strong women. And I don't have to make any apologies. I don't have to do anything to kind of cushion my personality. It's like, you strong, crazy bitch. I respect you. You strong, crazy bitch. I respect you, And so I've never had any problems with strong women. I get along fine, in that dichotomy. And now it just, it comes down to, once again, going back to how are you of service, right? With this kind of personality that God has given me. My personality is God given, and being that I am outgoing and I am loud, I just find ways to, like I said, I pad it and, get to the real issues. I can talk about stuff that other people can't. Right. I'm not afraid to say hooker. I'm not afraid to say anal sex, you know. And so I get a lot of people in recovery that come to me that they are not comfortable talking to other people in recovery about those things, and so we can go into, I've done, right next to my dungeon, I've done meditations and trauma work with people in recovery. So, but I think a lot of, sex workers, definitely, we got some, not just sex workers, people that have addictions and we've got, relationship issues, with people. We're not, healthy healthy interpersonal relationships. That's something that is a huge part of recovery, I know for myself.
Yeah, I think that that's really important. I personally love your personality. I've always loved your personality. I've always felt like you shoot straight and you're going to say what you mean and you're not going to hold back. I think that's the whole purpose of recovery anyway, is to find what you like and who you really are and not have this, need to be pretending you're something you're not, because that's part of why we stuffed our feelings. That's part of why we felt this disconnect. That's part of why we got into addiction, is feeling like we needed to do that. To be able to be whoever you are is so inspiring, because you let other people say, oh, then maybe it's okay that they're the way they are too. And if this show has that kind of message for somebody, good. I hope somebody hears that. I have no problem saying in any kind of environment, any addiction, anything I've ever done, anything I currently do, even that I've been working through sex addiction and daddy issues through BDSM. There's so much when I first started the show that I thought, is there anything that I won't talk about? I don't know. I don't know if there's anything I won't talk about, because we're as sick as our secrets. And so if we're not talking about it, maybe somebody really needs somebody else to hear their thoughts said out of their mouth, so that we can end up saying, you know what, me too. Me too. What is the big deal at the end of this? I mean, whenever we have judgments or shame, isn't it because we have some stupid story about who we think we're supposed to be? I mean, aren't we tired of that? Because in recovery, don't we get to re-examine what works and what doesn't and decide for ourselves, right? What?
No, I'm just laughing because I'm listening and.
Yeah, it's true though. We are sick as our secrets, and my whole idea of God has changed over the years. I didn't even call it God in the beginning because I couldn't handle it, like you were saying. And my identity, my story of who I think I'm supposed to be has changed. And my hope is that is just to become more clear, more self-actualized, and more helpful to another person. And how are you supposed to be helpful if you're still operating with this false idea of who you think you're supposed to be? So be loud. I love that you are, because you give a message where you're like, you're out of fucks. You're like, okay, I'm out of fucks. And you know what? That's a great spiritual place to be, because if I'm so focused on who I'm supposed to be, how am I supposed to listen to my intuition? I can't listen to both. What was that saying? You can't protect your face and save your ass at the same time. You can't. You have to be able to be willing to get to a place where, you know what, this is your one life. How are you going to live it? So I love that. And one of you is going to teach me how to pole dance. I've decided that.
Yes.
We'll have that on the next show.
We were not having it on the show.
Yes.
Maybe there is something we are not going to see.
We teach the older ladies in the room how to do the pole dancing. I'm down.
Yeah, I'll take a camera on set, on scene, somewhere else.
Just make sure to have a chiropractor there for our bad backs.
Yeah. So in future episodes, we'll talk about food addiction and bulimia and anorexia and body image issues and body dysmorphic disorder, anything like that. We're going to do that in an upcoming episode for sure. And I'm sure with you guys, having you want your body to look a certain way and how you feel about yourself. I'm sure that's come into play, on the one hand, wanting to be as fit as possible and as healthy. And if you also have any kind of food addictions like I have, it becomes this this back and forth trying to get healthy and healing the shame around that. It's so funny, think about, I had more shame about my food addiction than I ever had about dancing. I was so afraid people would see my food addiction if I gained weight or something, I had more shame about that. So weird. We're so weird. Whether or not we're in the industry or we are, it's not to say that in some way, shape, or form we're not always in the industry, because we're interacting with people all the time in different ways anyway. There's always some part of whatever that we're working through that we have in our relationships and our work environments. And I love attention. I think it's an addiction, and I very much know that it came from a complete invisible childhood. I don't know if that made sense, but Let's go with that. And I know that about myself. And as I become more aware of my motives behind things and whatever, it changes things. So I'm going to say this one thing, maybe you guys can chime in on this. In the recovery environment, like as Brittany was saying, there are things that we do have to be mindful of in what we say in any kind of recovery-focused situation, and what we wear and stuff like that. When I first started in all the recovery work I did, I wore half shirts all the time, and I was so distracting in any kind of event, and I don't know how I was so focused on my healing, because I was definitely distracting. But later, as I got to where I was wearing, more appropriate things and whatever like that, I went through a period of time where I gained a lot of weight. I went up to like 190 pounds in a marriage where it was relatively sexless. And I ended up, changing the dynamic of what my life was, my relationship, everything. And I ended up losing a lot of weight. And so when I lost a lot of weight, I got an outfit and I went to some sort of like co-ed recovery type event. And I sat down and there was a ton of people, like so many people at this event. But I was wearing something, I don't know, it was overtly sexy, but I felt pretty good in it. I mean, I felt very sexy, but I felt very like exposed again, because now I had lost this weight, and old me was like, hey, rubbing its eyes going, are we back? So now I'm in this situation, and somebody leans in and talks to me, and he says, if all the girls hate you and all the guys want you, you're doing your job. And then the event starts. And I promise you, I didn't hear a word anybody said or anything, because I was like so self-conscious the whole time because of that. And it made me really look at, my respect for recovery and for the focus of it, and to really curtail, my desire for that kind of attention, and to really kind of treat it more as a sacred space in the situations where the focus needs to be so much more on, staying sober and healing. And this is actually the lowest cut shirt I've worn in a while too. It's just, inspired by Brittany being here today, I guess. But, so do you feel like, for you, I don't know how to turn this into a question. Basically, you're like, as Brittany was saying, how you move about the cabin, when you go and you do recovery things, or you interact with people, to change your relationship and to honor that purpose in recovery, where you make no apologies for being a porn star or a stripper. And also a Playboy model. We didn't mention that.
It's a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
30 years is a long time.
Yeah. But also, that really, you're there for the purpose that you're there, for the purpose of healing, and that becomes more the focus.
I know myself, I never wanted to get laid. From the recovery men. Right. So, and then, I just didn't. I was like, I don't want to fuck any of y'all. And so, but I know I've had, other women in recovery that I know that they were, doing a lot of stuff. And that's, once again, everyone would think that I would be the one, because I'm the porn star, that I'm the one doing all this stuff. And I'm like, oh no, this is not where I'm getting my dick from, honey. No. So I never really wanted, I've always felt like the exact opposite. And then you had COVID happen, and thank you God for COVID, because not thank you God for COVID, but that sounded really awful. Thank you, God, for some of the things that I got from COVID. And one of them is like with this whole body issue kind of thing. Before COVID, I would have never left my house without doing my hair and makeup. But then with COVID, it was like you were wearing a damn mask, right? You put on some black sunglasses. Like I was like, I am not wearing makeup. And then like since COVID has ended and we've gone back out, like I'm like, bitch, if you ain't paying me, I'm not putting any damn makeup on. So like when I'm in recovery, like nobody's paying me to be there. So you ain't getting that side of me, right? Like every once in a blue moon, I might have like a business meeting or something. So I'll be dressed up. Or like I said, the luau. But once again, I am respectful to the space, and I don't want to make the other women compare themselves to me. It's my job to spend a lot of money on my looks. And I know that other women have got these issues, and I don't want to like inflate their issues by them doing the compare and despair, right, on me. And so I cover up so that I don't kind of, inflame those issues in people. I don't want to do that to anybody because I care about them. I love them. I want them to enjoy my company. I don't want them to feel like I'm bringing out something.
Or that you're unapproachable. Or
any of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I remember one time I was traveling and I was DJing and I went to this recovery event and I was, at that point I was promoting myself as a Playboy DJ. So I was like super cute and like latex little shorts and fishnets and like big boots. And they kicked me out of the event. I was like, are you kidding me? Like I couldn't believe it, but yeah, so the hoe got kicked out. It does happen, man. So, I already was aware that you should be appropriate before them, but I was in a work situation, but they didn't know. But it is, it's important to respect the space and what it's for.
Yeah. Okay, so we've reached the end of this show. This has been a great episode. I'm very excited that you guys got to join us. And so if you guys have anything you'd like to say is, little parting comments. We'll start off with you, Reagan.
I want to say that I'm grateful for the opportunity to come on the show and hear other experiences. I'm grateful that I've been able to stay sober and work as a dancer. And I'm grateful, like Brittany shared, that I don't remember if it was on camera or off camera, actually, but somewhere we were talking about the openness of being in the adult entertainment industry and being able to speak out about things like recovery and sobriety. I think that's really important, and I'm grateful that I've had the opportunity to do that. I just think it's important because that's what the basis is the opportunity to share that anyone at any point can recover. And
thank you so much. And Ashley?
The same. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak up and share my story with you guys and hear yours. And I have no regrets in my life. I've always lived in faith over fear for the most part. And all the mistakes or choices that I made, everything fell into place at the end of the day.
Perfect.
And I'm just grateful for the life I have today. Thanks for letting me
It's all learning lessons. Yeah. And Brittany?
I just wanted to say, Lisa, thank you so much for, doing this show. And, I think it's really important if anybody is listening to this show and they are a current sex worker or a former sex worker, and if they do feel as though they do need help or have some of these kind of issues, I know within the adult business, Pineapple Support, they offer a lot of support for sex workers. You can reach out to me personally on my Twitter. If you feel that you might have some kind of issue that you want to heal on, it's okay to admit it and to get help and to start the process of loving yourself and recovery, and to reach out to other people in recovery and say, hey, you know what? I'm here, and I'm here to show up for my best true self today. And I guess that's the main thing I wanted to say was just that,
Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much. This has been such a great show. You can watch us on Facebook, YouTube, and on Amazon Fire TV, or listen to us on the PHLV Radio app, or get our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeart Radio. And if none of that means anything, again, just go to themeetingspace.com where all the episodes will be there. Thank you for joining us today on The Real Recovery Show. We'd like to give a special thanks to our sponsor and gracious host, PHLV Radio here in Las Vegas. See you next week.